Hello everyone, I'm the Dogmatic director, and yes, it's that time of year again. It's the season of Halloween, one of the most celebrated holidays of the entire year, and I'm not above, going a little nuts over it from time to time. So, in order to cement my contribution to this festive season of the year, I am going to tackle one of the most horrifying, treacherous, most despicable things that makes any film critic shudder at the sound of its name. Remakes. More specifically, I'm going to be discussing the 2010 remake of the classic horror franchise, A Nightmare on Elm Street. Now, one thing we've come to accept from Hollywood is that when they run out of ideas for movies, which never takes long, they fall back on the easiest cash-in fallback they can rely on. Remakes, taking a movie from a certain number of years ago and recreating it in a modern style. Now let me clarify when I say this. Not all remakes are inherently bad. Some have the potential from day one to actually be fairly good. Whether or not they are varies on who makes it and how it's made. The new It proves that a remake has the potential to blow the original out of the water. And I know Sam and you is going to say it's an adaptation, not a remake, but that's a topic for another day. And, of course, one movie that was bound to be on the chopping block at some point was the Nightmare franchise. Now, I'll admit, I've been avoiding this movie for 7 years like the plague. I just discovered the Nightmare movies and finally watched them all when the first trailer hit, and my initial thought was, oh god, this is gonna suck. But, in the spirit of Halloween, and for the sake of the character I'm playing at this very spook house, I'm going to finally tackle this movie once and for all. The original movies followed a psychopathic child killer with one sinister twist. He had the ability to go into people's dreams, use their own nightmares and fears against them, and then kill them using that fear in the most brutal or hilarious way possible. So, who did they get to direct this homage to horror? Why, Samuel Bayer, of course! A man who has only been known for directing music videos and has had no experience directing a full-length movie, must launch a horror remake of a beloved franchise. Oh, and throw Michael Bay in there to produce it too. Genius! So, the question is, does this movie hold up and honor the original film? Can it stand on its own? And would Wes Craven, the original creator, be proud of the end result? Well, we're not gonna figure it out just sitting around talking about it, so let's take a look, bitch. We open with the opening credits showing us the poor bastard shoehorned into this project, and then we're greeted with the first shot, the Springwood Diner, establishing the movie town setting. This is similar to the original movies, which also took place in Springwood, and we're taken through the first kill scene with Freddy.
You're not real! You're not real! You're not real! I am now.
And we already know what he looks like. There's no more suspense to him, and there's no reason to be afraid of it anymore. Now, I don't want to nitpick this too much throughout this review, but look at this guy! That doesn't even look like Freddy. That looks like a Leatherface cosplayer who mixed up the outfits between Leatherface and Freddy. Now, when I say the reveal is ruined for this guy, let me explain. The advertisement of the movies when they first came out in the original movies were kind of vague about Freddy, and you had to see the movies to learn about him. And even then, it took about 15 minutes for him to finally appear. And when he did, they built it up like crazy. Until finally, we see him in a corner of an alley stretching his arms so far that they encompass the entire width of the alley.
Please, God.
This is God.
That, right there, was only the beginning of learning what he was capable of. Here, however, he's already appeared not 3 minutes into the movie. We know what he looks like, we know what he can do, so there's no real reason to feel suspense for what's about to happen later in the movie. And he's not even that threatening this time. He just shoves a knife into this poor guy's throat. Big deal, anyone can do that. Doesn't even show off Freddy's full power.
So how is that any different?
Huh?
What made the original ones more scarier than this one?
I'll get to that in a second. Just hang on. Nancy, one of the dead stock character's friends, mourns his loss at the funeral alongside many other loved ones. But she notices a picture of her with the dead boy years and years ago that she doesn't even remember. She brings it up to her mother, but she just shrugs it off. But Nancy isn't the only one mourning, as blonde throwaway character number 1 has trouble sleeping over the incident. She then starts falling asleep in class and seeing Freddy there waiting for her in her dreams.
You really shouldn't fall asleep in class.
She tries to stay awake at home, but her boyfriend sneaks into her house to comfort her to sleep. She's then tormented in her dreams again, one more time. And here's another point I want to discuss about this movie. The movie relies a lot on CGI for a lot of the transitions of setting in this movie, and trying to use camera tricks to disguise moving from one set to another. Unfortunately, it doesn't work all that well. The original movie had practical effects to deal with the majority of the time, but it works so well that it still holds up today. But if there's one thing that this movie is good from taking from the original, it's the kills. Freddy chases her around in the dream and finally catches her, while we're left to see what happens from the real world. This is heavily borrowed from the original movie, but it's toned down like crazy. The actions are the same, the movement is the same, everything except for the severity of the kill is the same. Let's compare that to the original kill. And fair warning, this isn't gonna be pretty. He doesn't just kill his victims, he torments them and then brutally kills them, not just ends their life suddenly. Showing this kind of ability from Freddy in the original movie establishes how much of a terrifying threat he really is, showing that he's sadistic, fast, and extremely ruthless.
But it's a remake.
Wait, what?
You can't judge a remake by how different it is from the original movie because it's an original take on that source material.
Okay, yeah, I have two rebuttals to that argument. The first rebuttal of that being, F you, there's not a shred of originality in this movie. The characters, the story, everything from the last 15 minutes is all ripped straight from the original movie. To be original means you have to have a unique take on something. But when you're blatantly ripping off aspects and elements from the original work, your movie is not as original as you think it is. Having new characters, a new setting, a fresh batch of unique kills, that's original. But we're still in Springwood. The main character is still Nancy. And so far, we've had one bland kill and one kill ripped straight from the original movie. Man, original must mean something completely different than what I'm thinking it means. And the second rebuttal to that is, well, it sucks seeing something you enjoy tarnished in such a way. When someone pulls a new spin on a classic that you enjoy and it fails miserably, you can't help but feel a tad bit angry about it. That holds true for most remakes. Taking liberties when you're trying to improve the character or the story is fine, but when you repeat the same assets and your changes hinder the final product, it makes people angry. There is a reason I bring this up, but we're going to get back to this. I'm going to save the rest of this argument for another point in this movie where it will most apply best. Anyways, the cop thinks that the boyfriend killed blonde chick we already forgotten about, and they arrest him on suspicion of murder. Nancy is slowly remembering an old entity from her past who went under the name of Fred Krueger. When she and forced male companion and potential love interest number 1 press her on the question, she reveals that they were at a daycare that Freddy worked at, and he took too much of a liking to the children, so they, quote, dealt with him, end quote. And they were all locked away as repressed memories. The male companion discovers more symptoms of sleep deprivation, looking into something called micronaps. Now, I'll admit, this little thing I wasn't quite sure about, but this is an actual symptom of sleep deprivation and insomnia. And yeah, it was an aspect of the original movies that wasn't entirely explained. But 3 steps back when you start using it as an excuse to put random sight horrors in the entire movie without them being asleep. Anyways, the last 2 left alive discovered that more and more of their old classmates from that preschool have been dying one by one, and it's come to the conclusion that something happened in their past that might cause Freddy to start killing one by one. There's a scene where the male companion, who turns out to be a swimmer, falls asleep seemingly while he's swimming. We see past images where we see the parents chasing Freddy for something that they found out, more than likely something relating to the kids, chasing him into an abandoned building, and proceeding to setting the building on fire. While this kid has been dreaming, he's been seemingly in the water this whole time, so we're wondering if he's going to drown or not. Unfortunately for us, he's resuscitated. Through more investigation, they realize that the only way they're going to find the answers that they need is to head to that old abandoned building and find out what secrets about Freddy lie there. Their vehicle breaks down after falling asleep on the road, and they finally make it to the building. And here is where we get to that point I was talking about. Through investigation of the old basement in this building, we discovered new elements of what Freddy was doing in that downstairs old preschool. They find a secret room with a bunch of photographs, and they essentially come to the conclusion, while not entirely clearly showing it, that Freddy may have potentially been a child molester. Now, this does add a different edge, but let me clarify something right here. Freddy Krueger was not a child molester. He was a child killer. Let me rephrase that again. Freddy Krueger was not a child molester. He was a child killer. You can't just change aspects of a character and expect those aspects to be just as scary as the original. It just doesn't work like that. Let me ask you a question. In the original Freddy Krueger movies, why did Freddy Krueger kill children? If your answer was because of a primal motive or some other ulterior agenda, you'd be incorrect. Freddy just killed children because, well, he enjoyed it. That's really the only reason that was given. Freddy was sadistic and got a kick out of every single kill. So when he was burned alive and granted power by demons or something, he regains the ability to continue his killing spree in another undead form in people's dreams. Not because he had an ulterior motive, but just because he enjoyed killing and could now do so in an immortal, powerful position. That was what was so terrifying. Now, this movie gives us a motive to why Freddy is doing these things, yes. But does that make him scarier? In fact, if they were planning to sequel this remake, they've kind of shot themselves in the foot here. Okay, so his motive is to kill the children who ended up getting him burned alive, right? So what's he gonna do when all the kids are dead? Once he's completed his task, he might as well rest in peace. There's no one left for him to kill. In fact, since he was a child molester and not a child killer, he really doesn't have much of an intention to kill anyways. He's not very experienced in it and not very effective. Frankly, he's just a pale imitation of what the original was. Both of them end up falling asleep one last time in this old building, and Freddy pursues them one final time to finally regain his vengeance. But they wake up from the dream and pulling Freddy into the real world. They have a bit of a scuffle with them until finally Nancy gains the upper hand.
It's because you're in my world now, bitch.
Yep. This part was taken from Freddy vs. Jason.
Nancy and her boyfriend are safe, and everything looks like everything might just have a happy ending. What the f***, movie? The movie doesn't have an end now. Really, the movie just kind of abruptly does a turn and then doesn't resolve it. And this movie never got a sequel, so what happened? Did she die? Does the fight continue? We don't know. This movie doesn't have an ending. It just abruptly cuts off and shows the credits. There's no end credits sequence either. And that was Nightmare 2010. And thankfully, the box office learned from this. New Line Cinema learned from this. Everyone who was involved learned from this. And they will never be making this mistake of remaking this movie ever again. Look, let's face it. Hollywood's never gonna stop running out of ideas for movies. It's just inevitable. But we can demand more from our entertainment. If movies like It can prove anything, it's that remakes can be good. They're not inevitably cursed from the beginning like, well, some other movies. But in order for there to be a change, we have to be willing to speak up. And a lot of people did after this movie was done. No one's gonna remember Nightmare 2010 from years down the line. They're just gonna remember the older ones. And unless that changes with this upcoming one, well, we can dream, right? And that wraps up this review. But don't worry, we've got another Halloween review coming up soon. So in the meantime, I'm the Dogmatic director, and I'll see you next time. Bye.